Gold Star Mother of Corporal Daniel Lee Tatum, United States Marine Corps. I am really excited to introduce my co host today for this webinar, Andrew Huber. Andrew is a liaison specialist for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. For the past 9 years, he has helped individuals, organizations, and congressional offices across the United States to establish oral histories uh, as part of this collection of veterans' oral histories. And so he has led workshops, he has conducted guest lectures, educating thousands on the importance of preserving these stories of all veterans. He is particularly interested in increasing the number of interviews that they have in their groups that are underrepresented in the Veterans History Project. And those include Asian American and Pacific Islanders, also known as AAPI, Native American veterans, and women veterans of color. Andrew lives in Washington, D.C. with his wife, cats, and dog. So I'd like to welcome Andrew to the webinar today, and we'll let you get started, Andrew.
Well, thank you very much, Cindy. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you all for having me. I'm really excited to share with you all what the Veterans History Project is and how your classrooms can participate. Today, as Cindy explained, is really just going to be sort of an intro to the Veterans History Project, a little bit about who we are, what we do, how you can participate. And then the later webinars are going to really go in depth about how you can use our archives to perform research, to do classroom projects, and eventually to actually both grow the Veterans History Project and allow your students to create their own primary sources by interviewing veterans for eventual submission to our archives. So what is the Library of Congress Veterans History Project? I'm going to tell a little bit of a story. I really actually love this story. It's one of the only examples of government really working the way it's supposed to that you can point to these days. It was all started back in the year 2000 by Representative Ron Kind. And Representative Kind was at a barbecue with his family, and he was talking to his father, who was a World War II veteran, and he had his son, who was very, very young. I think he was 1 or 2 years old with him at the time. And Representative Kind's father was telling these war stories from World War II. And Representative Kind realized that, well, my son's going to want to hear these stories from his grandpa one day, but what if grandpa's not around to tell those stories when he's old enough to really learn about them and understand them? So what he did was he went in, because this was the year 2000, he went into the hall closet and he got his camcorder and slung it over his shoulder, and he recorded his father telling these World War II stories in case his father wasn't around when his son was old enough to listen to them. So he knew that no matter what happened, hopefully his dad would be there to tell those stories in person. But if not, they would always have those recordings, and so those stories would live on in their family. And he realized, well, wait a minute, if this is valuable for my family, then this is valuable for everyone's family. So he went back to DC and he introduced the legislation that created the Veterans History Project. And it passed both the House and the Senate unanimously and was signed into law by President George W. Bush. And what that law said, it gave us our mission, which is to collect, preserve, and make accessible the personal accounts of American war veterans so that future generations may hear directly from them and better understand their selfless service. Now, what that means is you can open up a history book and you can read the names of battles and you can read the dates of battles, and you can even read the names of maybe one or two people who participated in those battles, usually generals, admirals, maybe a Medal of Honor recipient whose name is familiar, but you're not getting the individual personal stories of those thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of U.S. veterans who have contributed so much to our country. And that's what the Veterans History Project is about. It's not broad overviews of wars. It's not the stuff you read in history books. It's the personal stories of individual veterans. And this is just a tiny, tiny sliver right here of the varied experiences that we have. We've got people that you probably have read about in history books, Navajo code talkers. We've got the people that you'd expect to be in a project like this, fighter pilots, the veterans who stormed the beaches on D-Day at Normandy. But we also have some other stuff that you might not expect or you might not hear or learn about otherwise. This top right, this woman up in the top right here is one of my very favorite examples. She was an avid consumer of crossword puzzles, and during World War II, she saw a crossword puzzle in her local newspaper with a note that said, "Can you solve this? Call this number." Well, she loved solving crossword puzzles, so she did it and she called that number. And a few weeks later, two men in suits knocked on her door and said, "We're from the government. Do you want to work for us?" Well, it turns out it was a top secret program where, because most of the men were away at war or already part of the military, they were looking for women who are particularly good at puzzles to become code breakers. And they were part of one of the most top secret projects ever created outside of things like the Manhattan Project. They worked here in Washington, D.C., right outside of where American University is now. And there were thousands of women working every single day to break the German codes. And it was so secret, they couldn't even tell their spouses what they did. They had to tell them that they were secretaries and assistants. And it wasn't until the late 70s when they were allowed to finally tell even their family members that incredible important work that they were doing. So, that's one of the stories. Down here at the bottom left, that is Wendy Cram. He was a champion skier in Vermont in the 1940s. He was all set to represent the U.S. at the Winter Olympics when unfortunately they were canceled because of the war. So instead, he volunteered, and the Army sent him, because he had such good skiing experience. The Army sent him to the 10th Mountain Division to Camp Hale in Leadville, Colorado, to teach soldiers how to ski in anticipation of the invasion of the Italian Alps. And he actually he taught several classes of soldiers how to ski, then deployed with them, was almost immediately, I think if he was there about 2 weeks before he was shot and wounded, sent back to the U.S., and then he spent the rest of the war back in Camp Hale doing innovations to help advance alpine warfare. If you've ever been to a ski resort and seen the big tracked machines that they have grooming the trails called snowcats, Wendy Cram helped invent those at Camp Hale in Colorado as part of his military service. So these are just a handful of the personal stories that you'll hear that aren't going to be in the history books. And I don't believe I have control of the slide. So can I get the next slide, please? So one big question that we get is, who can participate? Is there any sort of veterans that you are specifically looking for? Are there veterans who can and can't participate? Well, any U.S. veteran, doesn't matter whether they deployed, doesn't matter whether they saw combat, any U.S. veteran is eligible to participate. The way that we see it at the Veterans History Project is that every veteran had an important contribution. Doesn't matter if they never fired their weapon. What a lot of people don't know about the military is that 9 out of 10 people who are in the military never fire a weapon, never see combat. Most of them never even deploy. These past couple decades in the U.S. are a little bit of an outlier, but over the period of history that we cover, the vast majority of veterans don't go to war. They don't even leave the country. And that's totally fine. We want to hear their stories anyway, because it's the 9 out of 10 out there filing the papers and driving the trucks and cooking the food that are the ones who are allowing that 10% at the tip of the spear to actually be going out and being in combat. So their stories are just as important. You do not have to be a veteran to interview a veteran. Anyone who is in 10th grade or above can interview veterans for the Veterans History Project. And if you have, if your classroom is not in 10th grade yet, you can still participate in supplemental roles. So you can have a teacher or a faculty member or an older student who is in 10th grade or above interview the veteran, and then ninth graders and below, they can help by doing research, coming up with questions, working the camera, helping to record, helping to take notes. There are all sorts of ways that every classroom can participate, no matter what grade level they are. It used to be that veterans had to be alive to tell their own stories. That is no longer the case. A few years ago, Congress passed the Gold Star Families Voices Act. And what that did is that enabled us to collect the stories of deceased veterans, veterans who died in service to their country, via the stories of that they related to us by direct relatives. That's parents, spouses, siblings, or children of a member of the armed forces who became missing in action or died as a result of their service during a period of war. Now, veterans who are deceased can still participate even if they aren't Gold Star veterans, if they left behind materials documenting their stories. And that's going to be, I believe, on the next slide that we're going to talk about. There we go. So this is the way that veterans participate and show and share their stories with us at the Veterans History Project. The majority of our collections are oral history interviews. It's going to be one person sitting down with a veteran, asking them questions about their life and their service, and recording that conversation to submit to us so that historians and researchers and future generations can watch or listen to those interviews to learn about these veterans' stories. But that is not the only thing that we do to document history. We also are a primary source repository. So things like correspondence, letters written to and from veterans during their service, and original correspondence. We need these originals. Original photographs, original artwork created by veterans while they were in service, pictures they took, paintings they painted, sketches they sketched. We have a really cool online exhibit called The Art of War, which is all artwork that was created by veterans while deployed, some actually in the foxholes as it was happening, and some things like portraits where they would draw in POW camps in exchange for extra rations and things like that. It's a really cool exhibit that I definitely suggest you check out. But letters, photos, artwork, also diaries, journals, and memoirs. And those can be diaries and journals written in their service or memoirs written after the fact. And while these oral history interviews do make up the bulk of our collections, we absolutely love it when people donate these original letters, these original photos, these diaries and journals, because if you're sitting down with a veteran and asking them their experiences, a lot of times this is happening 10, 20, 30, in the case of World War II veterans, now over 75 years after these events happen. And memories aren't always as fresh. Things get forgotten, things get exaggerated, stories get told that aren't always entirely true. And that's fine. That can be part of someone's history. But when you're looking at these letters, these photos, these diaries, these are recordations of history as that history was happening. So it's the most accurate and most detailed record that you can get of an event like that. So if you have veterans in your community, at your school, who are interested in participating and they have these materials like letters and photos and diaries, and they want to know if we can take them, yes. Not only can we take them, we very highly encourage it. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that these do have to be originals if you are donating these materials, these primary source materials. One of the questions I get asked the most in my job is why originals? Why can't we scan them and send you the files? Why can't we copy them and give you the copies? Well, there's a couple reasons for this. Number one, we're the Library of Congress and we deal in originals. You know, if you went to the Smithsonian to go see Betsy Ross's Star Spangled Banner or Buzz Aldrin's spacesuit, and you got there and they were reproductions, you know, you'd feel cheated because you go to the Smithsonian to go see these original pieces of American history. And likewise, researchers come to the Library of Congress to do their research on these original pieces of American history. a lot of times there are aspects of history that would be lost if they were not the originals. We had one researcher who came in from the Eastman Kodak Corporation, and they wanted to see original photographs that were taken during World War II, because not because of what the photos were of, but they wanted the photos themselves. Because during World War II, there were shortages of chemicals due to the war effort, and Eastman Kodak Company had switched to a new emulsion for their prints, and they wanted to see examples of this special emulsion that they developed during World War II to deal with the material shortages. So if we hadn't had the originals, they wouldn't have been able to do their research on those photos because they needed the physical photos themselves to take these samples. Also, we're just better set up. We have staff who are fully dedicated. Their entire jobs are preserving and restoring these materials to make sure that for as long as the Library of Congress exists, which we hope is going to be hundreds of years down the line, that these will be in pristine shape and always available. And because we've got these climate controlled, access controlled, temperature and humidity controlled storage locations where they are just going to stay in perfect condition for as long as we can keep them. This background that you see, that is a pocket diary that was kept by Albert John Carpenter. He was a World War I veteran. He kept this diary in his breast pocket. He made an entry every single day. And after the war, he gave that diary to his son, who gave that diary to his daughter. And Shirley Carpenter was her name. She kept this diary. It was a treasured possession. She kept it in a closet in her home in Pass Christian, Mississippi. And in 2005, she donated that pocket diary to us at the Veterans History Project. And just a few weeks later, Hurricane Katrina came through and put her house under 5.5 feet of water, including that closet where she kept the diary. Now, I'm not saying that if you don't donate these materials to the Veterans History Project that a hurricane's going to come through and flood your house, but it did happen in this case to Shirley Carpenter, and because she had donated it to us, it was safe because we are keeping them in those special secure facilities, and they're not going to get damaged, they're not going to get destroyed. Library of Congress, only 2 major fires in our 200-year history, so I think it's a pretty good record. And we're hoping to have no more in the future. So that's why we ask for originals. Next slide, please. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, well, what does a VHP collection look like? If I am participating with my class and we interview a veteran from our community, or maybe you're a veteran yourself and you're interested in telling your story, what happens with these collections once you've given your story? Well, every veteran who participates gets their own page on our website. It's going to look just like this. It's going to have basic service history, what wars or conflicts you fought in, what branch of service you served in, what units you served in, and that can be brigade, division, battalion. That can be ships you served on. However much detail you want to give us in the forms that you fill out, then that's fine. And the cool thing is this all is cross-referenced and searchable. So if you are, so Moses Rivas, they were aboard the USS Gray and the USS Thatch. You can actually, if you were on our actual website, you could click on USS Thatch or USS Gray, and that'll show you all of the collections that we have from other veterans who are aboard those ships. And it works the same way. If you were in the 101st Airborne, you can click on that. It'll show you all of our other 101st Airborne collections. It makes research really easy because if you're looking for veterans from a specific unit or on a ship, it's all right there. And it also means that veterans who share their stories, they can already automatically look up to see if any of the people they served with have also shared their stories and watch those. We also have a photo, if provided, and of course the collections material. And in this case, the collections material is a video oral history interview. So if you were on the actual website, you could click that play button and you could watch the oral history from right there on the website. So everyone who participates gets a page like this. You can link it, you can share it, you can do whatever you want with it. It's always going to be there and always going to be accessible. And this is the way that most researchers access our collections. It's pretty cool because when we first started in the year 2000, if you wanted to watch an oral history, you had to come to the Library of Congress. We'd give you a DVD. You'd have to sit there and watch it. Nowadays, everything's digital. We've got I believe about 90% of our collections are fully digitized. So you can just go watch that straight from the website. And that is a way that, with your classroom, if you're finding, say you're watching or you're reading The Things They Carried, you can go and look up, Vietnam collections from that unit, from those locations, and watch those stories right there. Next slide, please. And the other cool thing about the Veterans History Project is these collections are not just sitting on a shelf gathering dust somewhere. We have over 3 million researchers using our collections every year. We have over 850 books, academic papers, any cited works being created every year. And it's some pretty cool high profile stuff sometimes too. If you've seen The War or the Vietnam War by Ken Burns, almost every veteran you see in those movies came from VHP originally. The other cool thing is, because veterans retain their copyright, that means that they are free to do whatever they want with them. And if you get permission from the veteran, you are free to do whatever you want. So if you have a school website, and you want to feature the interviews that your class does on your school website, as long as the veteran says that's okay, that's fine. If you want to make a YouTube channel of all of the interviews that you've done, as long as the veteran says that's okay, that's totally fine. And even derivative works are okay as well. There are people who do podcasts about the best stories from the interviews that they've conducted. And again, if the veteran says it's okay, then it's totally fine, because the veteran retains all copyrights, all story rights, and all likeness rights as well. The other great thing about that is, if somebody, say Ken Burns, comes along and says, hey, I want to use this veteran's story in my new movie, if it's for a commercial purpose, the veteran is free to work out any sort of compensation that they want as well. So by giving your story to VHP, you are not giving up any rights. You are not giving up any opportunities. Next slide. So I think the big question that most of you probably have today is, well, how do classrooms get involved? And there are a number of different ways that you can do this. Number one, we've done a lot of the work for you. The Library of Congress website has a page where you can find lesson plans, research guides, primary source sets, and I forgot to include it here, but also story maps. Can I click? I cannot click, unfortunately. But and this is all easily accessible on the Library of Congress website. If you go to loc.gov, you can search for lesson plans, research guides, primary source sets, or if you want to take a screenshot of this here right now, and go to these addresses directly, that's another way you can do that as well. I will also, in the chat, at the end, I will also put these links in the chat. But lesson plans, we have, I think we have 3 different ones for primary, secondary, and collegiate. We have more research guides and primary source sets than I can count, in Veterans History Project and military and veterans involved and beyond. The Library of Congress itself, beyond the Veterans History Project, has thousands of these lesson plans and research guides and primary source sets on any topic imaginable. You can use our archives for primary source research. We have over 115,000 collections, each collection representing a veteran, an individual veteran and their story. And it goes all the way back to World War I and all the way up to the present and everything in between. So World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Cold War, Iraq, Afghanistan, minor conflicts like Serbia, Bosnia, anything that the U.S. has been involved in the past 100 or so years, we've probably got somebody who was there and can tell their story about it. And that is all searchable. It is all it is refinable. It is very easy to use. We also have what we call Experiencing War. These are our, oh, I'm sorry. Oh gosh, we just changed the name. Serving Our Voices, they're now called. We have Serving Our Voices online exhibits, which are, I believe there are 50 of those, each revolving around a theme, and it's hand-picked primary source materials for that each exemplify the themes that of that exhibit. So, for instance, we have an exhibit on uh, chaplains, military chaplains. We have an exhibit on helicopter pilots. We have an Native Americans. We have AAPI veterans. And all of these have generally between 6 and 12 primary sources, each primary source representing a veteran. And that could be oral histories, that could be documents, that could be photos or letters, all materials within the scope of the Veterans History Project. And you can also use our archives as companion material for non-history classes. A lot of English classes like to do supplementary materials. So like I mentioned before, if you're reading The Things They Carried, or if you're reading All Quiet on the Western Front, you can come to us and find those stories. While they may not be the exact people mentioned in the book, they're going to be primary source materials from similar experiences. And finally, we definitely hope that you use this as an opportunity for your classroom to create your own primary sources by interviewing veterans in your community, by reaching out to them and conducting those oral history interviews, or getting those primary source materials like photos and letters and diaries and journals. But these are all ways that your classroom can get involved, and these are all things that we're going to explore more in depth in our later webinar series. We are going to give you everything you need to know, both to use those archives for the research and to create your own primary source materials by doing those veteran interviews. And I believe Cindy put those links in the chat, so thank you very much for that. But do make sure to check those out before our next webinar. Then you'll already be familiar with the materials and how to use them. But we're going to tell you everything you need to know in the later webinars.
Andrew, can I ask how?
Oh yeah.
If you're do you have to be a member of the Library of Congress? How does that work? Can anyone be a member of the Library of Congress in order to participate in something like this? Is it a required piece?
That's a great question. So you do not have to be a member of the Library of Congress to use us for your research. To access our collections online, anyone with an internet connection from anywhere in the world can do that. You do not need to be a member. You do not need a reader's card or anything like that. All you need is a computer and an internet connection. In terms of donating these primary source materials to us, so if you interview veterans and want to donate those materials to become a part of the Veterans History Project, again, you do not need to be a member or anything like that. The only thing you need a reader's card for, is if you wanted to come to the library and view those materials, the actual original materials. So if you wanted to handle those photos or those letters, then you'd need to come. And the only thing you need for that, though, is what we call a reader's card, and anyone who is 16 or older can get a reader's card. You just have to pre-register online, come to the library here in DC, and get your card. And honestly, if you are in DC, if you're near DC, or if you are taking a trip ever to DC, I would highly recommend doing that, even if you're not doing research, just to get your card. Because number one, the Library of Congress is the most beautiful building in Washington, DC, and it's a really great and informative tour while you're here. And also, those readers' cards are good, I believe, in perpetuity as long as you have the card. So you pick it up next time you're in DC, and then anytime you ever want to use the library for any sort of research, VHP or beyond, you'll always have that. And it's just a great souvenir of your visit to DC to say, I was in America's library, and I now have a card for the biggest library in the world.
Thank you. I have one more question. Cindy, didn't you participate in the Veterans History Project? Could you maybe speak to your experience of the process?
Well, actually, Nicholas, our son, participated in the Gold Star Families Oral History Project. And Carrie Ward, who heads up the Gold Star community, actually was at the Gold Star Mothers Convention, and she interviewed my son Nick. And Nicholas, of course, was with the Army National Guard and had been deployed to Iraq before Daniel had been. And so she interviewed him as a veteran and as a Gold Star sibling. So yes, yes. And Andrew, I just want to say, talking about the materials, uh, the American Gold Star Mothers have turned over all of these applications because we were housing those in the basement of an old brownstone in Washington, D.C. And we realized that the documents themselves were just really falling into a great deal of decay. And so if anybody is thinking about sending those objects to the Library of Congress for preservation purposes, I can think of no better way to do that. As a matter of fact, other than just to communicate with someone there and say, hey, this is what we have. Um, are you all interested in taking it as part of a collection?
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for saying that, Cindy, because a lot of people think that the only way to participate is to sit down with a living veteran, and those Gold Star voices are just so important. And a lot of times people are, and even if it's not Gold Star, a lot of times people come across these materials like you had that have been previously created, just waiting for a home. Maybe it was a VHS tape of Grandpa talking about things from the 90s. Maybe it was those photos of those letters. We still get donations of World War I letters sometimes that people will find these in an attic or a basement and not know what to do with them. So yes, absolutely. If you have these materials already, and I'm going to give my contact info on the next slide. But if you have any questions about that, or if you have materials and you want to know if they qualify, or if you want to know more about the process as to how to donate them, which again will be in future webinars. But I know that not everybody has the time to watch the entire series, so I'm more than happy to answer questions and give advice about donations and what qualifications and processes and all of those things. And I believe that is on the next slide. And it is. So ahub@loc.gov, that is my email address. It is literally my job to help people participate in VHP, to help people submit materials, to help people get veterans in their community interviewed. Anything related to that, any questions you have, please feel free to send me an email, ask me any of those questions. Definitely make a note to attend the next parts in our webinar series. I'm not kidding. I hope I've emphasized this enough. If you go and watch every one of these webinars, by the end you will have no questions you need answered. You will know exactly how to do everything. You will be experts in all things Veterans History Project. So, but if you just can't wait, or if you don't know if you are going to be able to attend all of them, this is my contact info. One thing that I am always happy to do is if your classroom would like a guest lecture or a teaching workshop about how to do these interviews, I absolutely love. You can do these either if you're in the DC area in person, or if you're not, via Zoom. I'm happy to schedule one of those and show your classroom exactly how to do these interviews. So I think if anybody has, oh, sorry, I believe then it's back to you guys, and I will take questions at the end.
So I'm going to reiterate what Andrew said. We would love for you to participate in the upcoming webinar in May, on May the 14th. Be a part of it. If you have questions, we would welcome you to, Amber, can they unmute themselves at this point to ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, yes. So if you have questions for either Andrew or for myself, either one, then please unmute yourself and ask a question. I'm going to say again that you are, we invite you to go to the wreathsacrossamerica.org/teach website and look at the many materials that we have there. We're just really excited to be in this partnership with the Library of Congress. And so anyway, questions, if there are questions from anyone.
Not seeing
This
any.
is,
Oh, go
hey,
ahead.
this is, hi, my name's Deb Miller and I'm coming to you from Bedford, Pennsylvania. I just wanted to say that I'm not a teacher, but I certainly respect all those teachers out there. I work at a historical society, and also we have a circle of the Ladies of the Grand Army of the Republic. Now we're going back for a while here because we're Civil War descendants, but we help and assist with the education of children and patriotism for children across America. And I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to put all this together. It's a wonderful resource. Just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Well,
Thank
yeah,
you
thank
for
you, Deb.
being here today.
Thanks for all your work.
Well, I'll just jump in to say thanks for everyone who to join us. We will be sending this recording off to everyone tomorrow, along with the link to register for the next May webinar on the 14th. So thank you, Andrew and Cindy, for your time, and for everyone for joining us today. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. I just got on.
We'll send you the recording, Lois.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Have a great day.
Thank you.